everyone. This is the Crime Cafe, your podcasting source of great crime, suspense, and thriller writing. I'm your host, Debbie Mack. Before I bring on my guest, I'll just remind you that the Crime Cafe has 2 ebooks for sale, the 9-book box set and the short story anthology. You can find the buy links for both on my website, debbiemack.com, under the Crime Cafe link. You can also get a free copy of either book if you become a Patreon supporter. You'll get that and much more if you support the podcast on Patreon, along with our eternal gratitude for doing so. I would also like to recommend Stitcher Premium if you're a fan of podcasts. If you like true crime or crime fiction, there are loads of podcasts out there for you. And with Stitcher Premium, you can listen to the exclusive archives from Criminology or bonus episodes from True Crime Garage. You can also listen ad-free to episodes of your favorite podcasts. I've subscribed, and for only $4.99 a month, it's nice to have ad-free entertainment. Just go to Stitcher.com/premium and use the promo code CRIMECAFE, that's one word, all caps, to try it out. Absolutely free for a month. Hi, everyone. This week, my guest is the author of 2 novels, the latest of which is North and Central. He has an MFA in fiction, and along with being a writer, he's been an actor, singer, teacher, bartender, mailroom clerk, and washer of soap molds. In other words, he has the perfect background and life experience for a hard-boiled crime writer, as far as I'm concerned. My guest today is Bob Hartley. Hi, Bob. It's great to have you on. Thank you for being here.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Well, I'm glad to do it. I have to agree with one author's assessment of your writing, and I have to quote this guy. Bob Hartley nails late 70s blue-collar Chicago with jobs going away, bills coming due, and cops you can't tell from the robbers. That just nails it right there. I just think it's perfect. It's an absolutely fantastic book, and I don't say that lightly. I don't say that to everybody. Along with your experiences as a bartender, what made you decide to write North and Central?
Well, I grew up on the far west side of Chicago, and that was the world that I grew up within. And it's the neighborhood actually is called Austin. It's up until a few years ago, it was the largest neighborhood in Chicago. But if you go to Chicago, none of the tourists go there. It's basically it was a working class neighborhood in my childhood up until the point, I should say a working class, white working class neighborhood until the time I was about 14. And then it became an African American working class neighborhood within the next few years. And during that time, there was a lot of economic turmoil going on in the 70s, and I witnessed it. So, and a lot of racial turmoil as well. And I witnessed all of that. And that has put a mark on me that I have difficulty writing about anything else. The stories I've written, the 2 novels I've written, all seem to gravitate towards like the 60s, 70s. I might write another one that's set in the 80s. Because I can't find anything that is as I don't know, poignant to what's going on now. The book, although I'm certainly glad that it's looked upon as a noir novel, that it's it captures that time and so forth. But I think of it as a metaphor for the system itself. So actually a lot of what we're experiencing right now, a lot of low paying jobs, a lot of people without any real, without a lot of hope, to be honest with you. A lot of economic insecurity, and it's what I try to do is capture this one event going on, this one few months in which all of it's coming down on top of them, and they really can't. Human beings like to think they're in control, but in reality, as we found out recently, you're not in control. And so we scramble to find some kind of control when we really don't have it. And hence people going out and trying to empty the stores of toilet paper. Anyway, uh, so we're constantly trying to do that, but in reality, sometimes the situation, you have no control. And
That
that's
is
what they
so
find
true.
out here. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely true. I think that your story is representative not just of Chicago, but of urban areas and the country in general
Right. That's
at
great.
various levels. It's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah,
Well, that's great because that's what I was attempting to do. It's not just about those people of that time. It's representative of what's going on with millions of people right now.
for
So
sure.
yeah.
I mean, I live in Maryland, and the first thing that comes to my mind is Baltimore
Oh
and
sure.
DC. I mean, Baltimore and DC have both struggled with
Right.
huge urban issues.
Right.
And of course, you see that in TV and shows like Homicide, The Wire, that kind of
Oh
thing.
right. Right. Exactly.
But but the characters in your book are so well drawn and unique. How many of them were based, say, loosely or otherwise, on real people?
They're all composite characters, so none of them are exactly the same person, but I did know people similar to those people, and what I try to do is cobble them together and make them even more interesting by putting them together. And that's what I attempted to do. And if they ring true, that's very good because they are fictional. None of them really existed. So, but if they ring true, just you asking that question tells me something that they did. So that's great.
For sure. I mean, they have all these wonderful little quirks, and you can tell all of them apart. They all have a certain kind of trait or a look to them that
Mm-hmm.
makes them distinct.
That's great.
And I think when you can do that with a lot of characters, that's a real skill
Yeah,
of a good writer.
there's a Chicago writer, Nelson Algren, and I think what he tried to do was, which he was like, he's well, he's long gone now, but he was highly influential with me because when I read his books, I saw somebody who was looking at a neighborhood and actually writing about people who aren't represented in fiction very often, and captured it very well. And that's one of his traits, was that he was able to look at all these characters, and even the minor character, if you were to follow that character out the door, you would be experiencing a story that might just be as compelling as the one you're reading, that's tough to do. And Algren did it very well. If you're saying that I've come close to it, that's great, because that's what I'm looking for.
Well, now you've got me interested in reading more Nelson Algren.
Oh, Neon Wilderness. Start there, and you'll see
Ooh, okay.
the short stories of Neon Wilderness. He was unbelievable. He was an unbelievably great writer.
That's fantastic to know. Um, let's see, the bar you write about has so many unique characters. Okay. And do you write individual bios for each of them, or do you just make it up as you go? How do you handle keeping everything straight?
Well, first, what is it? I'll do a draft, and what I would do is I'd write every day. So write every day, write part of it every day. But as far as characterization goes, I was given a suggestion very long time ago, and it was this: it's not important for the reader to know what the character is doing 24 hours a day. It's important for the writer to know. So if you were to ask me, for example, what the main character of North and Central is doing right now, I could tell you. Okay. So in his typical day, the same is true of all the characters. You have to know them so well. and even description of what they're wearing. What it's as an exercise, and actually to find the characters, I would describe them from head to toe. But then again, the reader doesn't have to know what they wear head to toe. You have to know as the writer. So, and then you choose what is the most poignant thing. What gives you the most bang for the buck, to tell you about that place and those people. And another interesting thing that I was given a suggestion was that minor characters, the supporting characters, are part of the setting. So the way they're described tells you something about the place as well. So what I'm trying to do anyway is to try to get as much from a character as possible as far as conveying the story. And so minor supporting characters are part of the setting. Tells you about the place. Well, what does it tell you about the place? Well, what they're wearing, and how, and the speech, the dialogue itself, and so forth tells you something about the place too. It's so that's basically what I did. That's how I work.
The dialogue is also very authentic.
Oh, thank you.
I thought.
Thanks.
Let's see, I understand that you are involved in adapting the material to a stage play?
Yeah, shortly, well, probably about a year after the book was out, this gentleman, Ed Blatchford is his name, and he was a co-founder of American Blues Theater in Chicago. It's a very old theater company. It goes back to the 80s. And he got a hold of me on Facebook, and he said, I'm Ed Blatchford and so forth, American Blues Theater, and are you interested in writing this as a play? And I said, yes, I am. And especially because it was a Chicago theater company. It sort of didn't work out with American Blues Theater. They're going in a different direction, but with Ed, it did. So Ed and I and another gentleman were working on it, and it's a different animal. I can tell you that right now. It's a very different thing, and it's going to be different than the book if it ever is produced. And this has been going on for a while now. It's been a few years, so it's a whole different challenge. I've never written a play before, so they're very
different.
Patient with me.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I understand completely, because my first novel was optioned by a movie producer.
Oh, I see.
And she asked me to write the screenplay. I'm like, me?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the funny thing is that I had written a screenplay previously, 2 of them actually.
Oh, wow.
Not that I'm a professional at this point in terms of sales, but it is very, very different. Now that I'm getting into the craft of screenwriting, it's amazing how different it is.
It's very
similar
different,
but different.
Right.
Similar but different.
Yeah.
Let's see. I was going to talk about the differences between the two, and I think we already have, I guess, in a sense. Is it hard to find money to produce stage plays these days?
I would say yes. That's not my. Actually, we haven't really been worried about that as much as writing a good play.
Simply writing.
I think though that it is in respect to. This would be an ensemble piece, and it would be at least 10 characters to make it to capture the place, and that makes it difficult because obviously you have to pay 10 actors, and also you're looking for an ensemble theater company, and that's difficult. Fortunately, Ed had a friend of his that does have an ensemble theater company. He's looking at it now. He's a professional writer, more than I, as far as writing for television and for film and for theater. So he's looking at it now. He'll jump in, and before it's over, we'll have 4 or 5 people involved, and hopefully we'll have something good by the end. And if it's produced, that's great. If it's not, that's okay too. It takes just like getting a publisher, it takes a very, very long time. And the experience of writing a play has helped me a great deal, So, I don't worry about whether it's going to be produced or not. I do want to produce, I do want to write something that's good. That's basically always been my thing. I never worried about if I had a publisher or not before I wrote a book, so.
That's
And
good.
yeah, well, yeah, it's I don't care if this is a difficult thing, is I don't care if it's commercial or not. I don't care if, I really don't. I care if it's a good story. And often those two things don't mesh. I mean, so the first book I wrote, it took 14 years to get somebody to publish it. This book, it took about 3. So, I mean, and again, the publisher of this book is an independent publisher out of Chicago. It's not a major publisher. So, except when it gets published, then every review it's gotten has said that it's a very good book. So, and the first one too. And so it's very interesting because, well, then why couldn't I get an agent? Why couldn't I get why couldn't I get so that tells you something about the publishing industry then, right? It's not about, and I explain that to people, like somebody say, well, Bob, how did you get published? And I'll say, I don't know. I sent it to everybody I knew. Finally, somebody said yes. And then we had it published. But there is no rhyme or reason, I think, to it, except that they're looking for something that can make money. And, it's a business, I understand.
Of course.
So you can't get really bitter. I'm not bitter about it. And I expect it, actually. So, so I'm very happy, actually, about
That's
what
great.
I've heard. Yeah. I've been able to write what I wanted to write. That's great.
I think that's really the bottom line. How well do you write?
Yes.
I mean,
yes. And,
I get a little tired, as I'm a self-published author at this point.
Yeah.
And I get a little tired of hearing all this. You got to come out with 3, 5, 10 books a year to keep your readers interested. What? I'm like, no, I'm not doing that.
no, I don't think that is, that kind of mass production attitude is a problem, because, if you look at great writers, great novels and so forth, they take years to produce that many books. To say that you're going to come out with 3, 5 books a year, that to me is then what are you writing and why are you writing it? So, exactly. And that's difficult. I mean, because I know there are people who make their living from writing, and I don't. I mean, I have a job, and that's how I make my living. So I understand, and then there are people, though, who make their living from writing, and they feel like they have to produce that kind of material. For me, it's counterproductive for me. Not for, I understand, though, if you have to make a living, that's a different story, but I don't think the quality of the writing is going to be there. It just can't be, unless you're a genius. No, I mean, if you're a genius,
so.
maybe if you're a genius, you can churn out that many books a year, but I don't see how anybody could do it, other than that.
Or you take amphetamines and never ever get any sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you have a ghostwriter.
Yeah, and
team of ghostwriters.
Oh yeah, there are people with ghostwriters, and then what do you? Oh my God, if you're taking amphetamines, what are you writing then too? But anyway, but I understand why people do it.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't agree with it. It's just, it's like you're pushing yourself a little too hard and sacrificing some quality there.
Oh, definitely.
In the process.
Definitely. Sure.
That's my main concern.
Sure.
Even though I have a funny feeling I know the answer, I'm going to ask anyway. White Sox or Cubs?
Oh, well, now that's an interesting story. You think that would be a quick answer, but it's not. And so
oh my gosh,
I'm going to eat some time up here. If you're from the South Side, you are a Sox fan, White Sox fan. If you are from the North Side, you are a Cubs fan. But if you're from the West Side, as like my father was, a White Sox fan. My brother is a Cubs fan. My friend is a White Sox fan. I am a Cubs fan, or was. So the West Side is a little murky there. It's not as straightforward. So that you thought that was going to be a pretty straightforward answer, but it's not, which makes the West Side makes the West Side even more interesting. It's even
This
for
is
sports.
really interesting. It sounds like the Civil War or something, like you're in like the border state area
Yeah,
between
exactly. Yeah, there.
territories.
That whole thing is really interesting because the old Chicago Cardinals, which was a football team, was in the NFL, and they played in Comiskey Park, which was on the south side. Well, the Bears played in Wrigley Field, which was on the north side. So the south side people were Cardinals fans. And up until about 10, 15 years ago, you could still find Cardinals fans on the south side, elderly gentlemen and ladies who were Cardinals fans rather than Bears fans because of that. So yes, the lines are drawn. Mm-hmm.
How very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm always kind of rooting for the Cubs a little bit,
Yeah,
even
sure.
though I'm not from Chicago and I am from New York.
Oh, well, there you
and
go. Yeah.
I've been a lifelong Met fan.
Oh, sure. Well, I resent the Mets because in 1969 they dashed my dreams.
Yeah, and the Red Sox.
Yes, but the
Red
Cubs.
Sox in '86.
I can name everybody, the main players on the Cubs team from 1969.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
Yeah.
I believe Baltimore was also beaten.
Probably, but
yeah.
The Cubs. Why?
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
They were such a terrible team for so long. I always felt sorry for them.
Yeah. Let's just move on, Debbie.
Let's move on. On with baseball.
Because I'm getting bitter again. So.
Oh no, we can't have that. Let's see. So Nelson Algren, I assume, would be one of the authors who inspired you most. Are there any others?
Yeah, Hubert Selby. He wrote Last Exit to Brooklyn. I think. There's someone else. Southern Writers. Faulkner. But that's everybody says Faulkner. Who wrote Carson McCullers? Ooh, yeah. Oh, yes. Carson McCullers. Oh, yeah, great. And
she's intense.
Oh, yeah, intense, but great. Really, really interesting stories. Captures a place again. Not everybody's perfect, or average people gone.
Yeah, definitely.
In very difficult situations. Sounds familiar to me. Anyway, so yeah, I think. But and then Farrell, he wrote the Studs Lonigan trilogy for Chicago, and that's it captures the neighborhood, and I've been compared to him, I guess, I've been compared to Algren and Farrell in that kind of tradition of Chicago writing. That's really good company to be in. Algren, especially. Algren was unbelievable. It's amazing that people don't know who he is. He won the first National Book Award.
Wow.
He was. Yes, he did. And two of his books were made into films. But during the 50s, because he was a socialist, and during the 50s, during the Red Scare, he was pretty much suppressed. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah, Hemingway called him the second best writer in America, referring to himself, obviously, but he did. He said
the first was.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and he was widely read, and he was praised. And he's just disappeared. But there may be some resurgence there, because again, he wrote about this Polish neighborhood near northwest side of Chicago, and captured the people there. He wrote about the bars and the drug addiction and the gangs and so forth. And it was and he really exposed, he was unbelievable. He was mugged one time, and he was given a pass to go to a police lineup, just to identify his mugger. He didn't, and but he kept the pass, so he would go to police lineups and just go to them to watch them. and he would report. He would use those in his stories and so forth. He wrote a story. I think The Captain Has Bad Dreams, and it's about this police captain and these lineups. And it's just unbelievably great stories. So.
Interesting. Was he the author of Man with the Golden Arm?
Right. Yeah. He hated that
I read
movie.
that a long time ago.
He hated the movie.
He hated it, huh?
Hated the movie. Yeah.
Interesting. He was. Because I did see it a while back. Yeah. He
said I was paid $1,000 a week to come out to California to work on it. I came out on a Monday. I was gone by Wednesday. Yeah, to paraphrase, like with Otto Preminger, the director, to paraphrase Algren, I'm probably not going to get the quote correct, but anyway, the director asked him, "Oh, how can you live amongst all those prostitutes and drug addicts and criminals?" And Algren said, "I was going to ask you the same thing."
That's funny.
So he wasn't popular. Anyway,
yeah, I guess not.
I guess his second day he ran into some gamblers and they went to the track. So that was Algren. I mean, but he really interesting guy. He knew oh my God, see now I'm losing. Richard Wright. He knew Richard Wright, and they were very close friends, and they made an agreement that whoever was published first would call their book Native Son. So isn't that interesting? Yeah, and
very interesting.
Wright beat him, so that's it.
I'll be darned.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to add before we finish up?
I don't know. I think thanks very much for having me on. I would like to say that. I wish this had been a little bit more humorous. The book is funny, but
I was going to say you have a lot of humor in your book.
Yeah,
great
I mean,
humor.
So, but I think I'm glad we talked about writing. I'm glad we talked about how difficult it is to write. I'm glad we talked about how difficult it is to get published. And that if there are people out there who are aspiring writers, or, I hate the word aspiring. If you're writing, you're writing, if you never get published, there's a good chance I would have never been published,
There you
so
go.
I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it because, it helps me to understand the world better. And if it's published, hopefully it helps other people understand the world better too. Maybe a world they're unaware of, so.
Exactly.
And just stay healthy, please.
Yes.
You and everybody else. And I'm a respiratory therapist. I'm going to go into work in just about 15 minutes.
And you're in Pittsburgh now.
I'm in Pittsburgh, yeah. So that's what I
spent a brief time in Monroeville.
Monroeville, yes, I know of it. I've been there a few times, but I live within the city itself. So
excellent. It's a cool city. I like it.
I've enjoyed living here. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And thanks for having me on.
Well, it was my pleasure, Bob, and I'm really glad you could be here.
Great.
So before we go, remember, everyone, to check out the Crime Cafe box set and anthology on my website, debbiemack.com. You'll get more than your money's worth if you buy those ebooks. They're great, believe me. The authors who wrote the stories that contributed, fantastic stuff. You can also get copies by becoming a Patreon supporter. Just look for the Patreon logo on my website, debbiemack.com. And our final show of the regular season is in 2 weeks. Our guest will be Richard Armstrong. Until then, take care, wash your hands, and happy reading.